The United Kingdom, an archipelago north of the European mainland, extends from the chalk cliffs of the English Channel to the fjords of northern Scotland. To the west, it crosses the sea to embrace Northern Ireland. Its 16,000 kilometres of coastline, contrasting landscapes and great divergence of latitudes have resulted in an extremely unequal distribution of the people throughout the country. There's a pronounced mismatch between north and south, between deserted counties and congested cities, between London and the rest of the country. By ruling the waves, the United Kingdom extended its territory well beyond its own borders, developing trade and building an empire which reached its peak in the early 20th century. Yet ancient divisions still threaten the nation's equilibrium and integrity, even today. Let's take one day, from sunrise to sunset, to discover the forces which drive and shape the territory of this country, which has now chosen a very different European destiny for itself. At night, the lights of the major cities shine bright. Belfast in Northern Ireland, Cardiff in Wales, Glasgow in Scotland, and in the south of England, the immense metropolis which is London. It's 5 in the morning. At Peterhead in northern Scotland, Jimmy Buchan's trawler Amity 2 is coming into port after 10 days fishing in the North Sea.
Four people are even thinking about getting up. We're landing the white fish first for the market.
Different species, we've got cod, haddock, whiting, monks, roaches, lemon, sole, plaice.
We'll then land the langoustines. That is the cream of the shot. That's the one that's worth a lot of money and will be sent all over Europe within a matter of hours. So it's a very, very fast and speedy process.
At the other end of this great island, on the southern coast, the ballet of trains carrying merchandise through the Channel Tunnel is already underway. The tunnel is now 20 years old. It has physically linked the United Kingdom to the European continent, making it its main trading partner. 24/7, 365 days a year, heavy goods vehicles with their contents and drivers are loaded onto the huge freight trains which then hurtle through the tunnel under the channel. The flow is closely supervised by the technicians at the English terminus in Folkestone.
So you need the route through the access 158, over?
That's correct.
Okay, so you don't move for the moment.
Okay, cheers up.
Thank you, cheers. Son train trop long.
On va bloquer l'accès à 4 plateformes si on fait ça.
Neil Page oversees operations from the Underground Control Centre at Folkestone, which boasts Europe's largest visual control panel, measuring 32 metres end to end.
The UK terminal on the left, the French terminal on the right. Trains are on the platforms where they're loaded, they go into the tunnel. The North Tunnel is the normal tunnel that's used for trains travelling from UK to France. Exits the tunnel, goes around in the loop so it's correctly positioned for unloading, it's reloaded, and heads back to the UK in the South Tunnel. In the first year of operations, we had about 100,000 freight shuttles running through and carry 1.6 million trucks today. So in terms of traffic increase, it's been phenomenal.
Rolling out of the shuttles, the HGVs take the M20 motorway towards London. At this early hour, the traffic is very heavy. It's only 100 kilometres to the capital, but it takes a good 2 hours. While a lot of traffic between the UK and continental Europe is concentrated at the tunnel, the island also has several major ports which link it to its import-export partners throughout the world. Germany, the Netherlands and the northern nations, but also the United States and China. And even today, 50% of goods are still transported by sea. At the same latitude as the tunnel, the ports of Bristol, Southampton and Felixstowe, which date back to the days of the Empire and before, are already busy at 6 in the morning. And all these ports gravitate in the orbit of London, the world in a city which takes the lion's share of their traffic. For hundreds of years, London owed its prosperity and expansion to the River Thames, which flows through the city from end to end. Ships from around the world would unload their goods at London's docks, which stretched for kilometres right into the centre of the city. The historic heart of London, right on the Thames, brings together its seats of political power, the royal palaces, and its seats of economic power, the buildings in the city square mile. Facing the city is the 310-metre-high skyscraper, the Shard, which opened in 2012. Rising from the historic heart of London, it symbolises the capital's continued vitality and incredible dynamism. It's nearly 8 o'clock, and at the London Stock Exchange, bells will soon chime to announce the opening of the markets. The city is an enclave of 3 square kilometres, which benefits from advantageous tax laws. The reason hundreds of banks, half of the world's insurers, and 80% of its investment funds have a presence here. $1 billion is traded here every minute. Formerly the nerve centre of a vast trading empire, the capital is today a major financial centre, connected to the rest of the world via an extensive network of fibre optic cables under the sea. Faster than satellite links, these ultra-high-speed connections connect London to New York, Hong Kong and Tokyo. Stock market operations are now carried out 1 million times faster than 10 years ago. This high-frequency trading has completely revolutionised the markets. Huyn Gentrieux is a new type of businessman who fuses traditional finance with the latest technologies.
So over the last 10 years, 1 million more people have moved into London. London has emerged also as what we call the fintech capital of the world. So any innovation linked to technology and finance really is in London today, much more than New York, the Silicon Valley, or Hong Kong, for example.
And while the city remains the centre of traditional finance, the beating heart of this new fintech has set up shop 5 kilometres away in the booming new neighbourhood of Canary Wharf, built on the site of the docks which made London's fortune. Several thousand new companies were created in London over the last 2 decades. These are quite often small concerns, which come to Huey for support and advice.
So the skyline of London has totally changed over the last 10 years. Now when you look at London, so if we look at the Shard, if we look at the Cheese Grater, if we look at the Heron Tower, all of those towers didn't exist 5 years ago. And the reason is that the government was very, very proactive in encouraging startups here in the UK.
A consequence of London's expansion and enrichment is that living in the centre is now unaffordable to most people. As a result, the well-off young workers of Canary Wharf have flooded into what used to be working-class inner-city neighbourhoods, transforming them in a process dubbed gentrification by sociologists. The British capital is one of the most expensive cities in the world for property. 5 kilometres from the city, The average price per square metre is about €12,000. 3 kilometres away, it's from 15 to 18,000 euros. And in the centre, the average price is about €25,000 per square metre. London is far from being just its historic centre and the neighbourhoods clustered around the city. London is immense and its population continues to grow by 100,000 every year. Greater London comprises 32 boroughs, forming what is strictly speaking considered London. Its edges 25 kilometres from the royal palaces at its centre. It is home to 8,600,000 people. Beyond Greater London, though, throughout the green belt created in 1947 as an encircling lung of vegetation, is the metropolitan area. It's a densely populated part of England into which, since the 1960s with the creation of new towns like Milton Keynes, people have been fleeing to escape the problems of urban congestion. 15 million people live in this commuter belt, which extends the capital's outer limits 150 kilometres from its centre. In all, London and its metropolitan area are home to around 23 million people, over a third of the entire population of the United Kingdom, crammed into a fifth of its territory. London, then, is the bloated capital of an unequally inhabited country. And onto this demographic imbalance weighs the burden, both real and symbolic, of what the British themselves call the North-South Divide. For most Brits, this North-South Divide is an unavoidable fact of life, part of their shared conception of the kingdom. Benjamin Hennig, who teaches geography at Oxford University, shows how this divide is inscribed into the landscape. The split occurs at about 150 kilometres from the capital.
The Romans built the Fossway, which was the first western border of the Roman Empire before the Romans started conquering lands further north. These started the early manifestation of the division between the north and the south.
The Roman Fosse Way linked Exeter to Lincoln and separated the chalky, relatively flat regions of the south from the hillier, granite regions of the north, where the mining resources that fueled the Industrial Revolution were all concentrated.
And we are just really flying over this line at the moment, which is dividing these geological areas. There, that's where industry started. Nature really provided what made the north being as great as the industrial heartland at the time.
It was the great cities of the Midlands and the north, Birmingham, Sheffield and Manchester, that became the strongholds of the British steel and textile industries. The factories grew up around the mines which extracted the iron and coal that were abundant in these areas.
The wealth of the north was brought towards the south. Industrialization here in the north provided the basis for the United Kingdom as a whole country to build up its empire. Quite often these thriving industries kept the country going for almost 2 centuries. So up until the late 1980s,
"250 kilometres north of London, Sheffield was the capital of British steel. It's where stainless steel was invented and was thus the home of innovation in steel metallurgy.
Sheffield Steel is well known, and this is one of the smaller steel factories, but which is one of the very few in the area here which is still being used today.
The death of steelworking in Sheffield, or of the textile industry in Manchester, a city once nicknamed Cottonopolis, and the general decline of industry in the north of England have made the reconversion of these towns a brutal necessity.